And hello, welcome back to See What Sticks, a podcast combined with Hollywood Casting and Film. I'm Russell.
I'm Leilani.
I'm Leilani Downer. And
I'm Vinay.
Welcome back after the 4th of July to a brand new episode.
Yes, glad to be back. Obviously still a little dazed and confused, but...
Yes, I'm glad to be back as well. It's fun getting a chance to talk to everyone.
Yeah, it's a great experience. On this episode, it's going to be sort of similar as to when we had Vinay on in the past and when we've had Leilani. And we're just going to talk about some new projects and some new things that Hollywood Casting and Film has coming up, as well as some of the current projects that we're working on and some of the inside looks into all of that. So, Vinay, you can take it away.
Great. So I will first start by telling our audience that Leilani has written a really funny script that we're casting right now called The Zoom Room Breakup. So we'll be talking about that during this episode, and Leilani will be telling us about her inspiration for the story, as well as what type of performances she's looking for during the casting of the project. But briefly off mic, we were just talking about a project, Leilani, that you were working on with it sounds like it's a feature as well, and a very fascinating story about someone you've been corresponding with. And maybe one day this is a Hollywood Casting and Film production, hopefully. But could you maybe first just start telling us about that story and that experience you've had with the person you're working with?
Well, I'm in the midst of working on a project right now at the very beginning stages of development in terms of writing. I stumbled upon a real story. We call it intellectual property. It was a book at one time and still is. The title of the book is Letters from My Father's Murderer. And it's a pretty dramatic piece. I was at a conference and I heard the writer, who was actually the subject of the book, talk about her experience and writing the book. And at the end of the conference, or the particular session that I was in, I approached her and said that, this is very much a movie and I'm interested in it. And so we exchanged information and pretty much went our way. About a year later, as things go, there's so much that we're all about. I had time, to really reflect and say, I really want to pursue this because the story touched me. It's all about forgiveness and redemption. And, sometimes when you see tragedy that happens in the world and, people step up and they say, I can forgive that person. I can forgive them for the horrible things they did. I often question, could I go the distance, or where does that come from? That huge forgiveness that you can give somebody for somebody who's pretty much destroyed your life. And so, it was an opportunity to explore that. So long story short, we're in the process of putting the idea down on paper. I'm at the outline stage, which is a part of the writing process, and we want to take it out to, studio level and see what we can do with it.
And when you write a piece like this, do you find that you need to spend a lot of time with your subject and sort of immerse yourself in their world before you even put anything down on paper? Or how does, when you're writing about something so weighty,
Right.
How does that process work?
Well, I'm a solo writer. I don't have a partner, so I write by myself. I write, in front of the computer. The thing about this project is it's a true story, and it's involved. It has tentacles. It touches her. It touches the guy who's in prison right now, currently. It touches all of the families. So you really want to be on point, and you want to be honest. And so it's, it's very necessary that I speak with her and involve her in all aspects of the project because I want to be true to it. I don't want to tell a fantasy or an untruth that could reverberate and hurt other people, even if you change the names. So that, it gives a sense of authority to the project, and it enables you to deliver something maybe that nobody else can on that particular subject.
Right, and I imagine it also allows you to write scenes and write dialogue pertaining to a situation that maybe you've never even thought about before or empathized deeply with, and that must be exciting as a writer to try to sort of deconstruct what that very specific emotion that you were describing of trying to forgive someone that ruined your life. That must be, I guess, thrilling in some way, even though it's a tragedy, as a writer to actually try to capture that, right?
Right. And the interesting thing about it is her story just really lays as a feature. There's the definite act one and, the inciting incidents. And then, you get to the point of redemption, because every story has that moment of redemption. And then everything falls apart after that. So when you're in the third act. So her story really does have the weight of a good, feature film.
Right. Well, and I think that's why first of all, this is why we love working with you over and over again at Hollywood Casting and Film, because even though you're known, or I guess you started your career as a comedy writer, there's so many avenues that you tend to take in your writing, that it always seems real fascinating to us, what direction you decide to go down. So I'm excited for that project. And then, of course, we want to talk this morning about the project that we're currently casting with you, the Zoom Room Breakup. One of the things that we get to do on this podcast and in general is talk about a project and about the roles in that project before actors get to audition. And what we're trying to do here, I think, is create, not only paint a picture of the story that the writer intended, but also talk very specifically about the performances that you've written and the characters that you've written, so that people go into the audition with a game plan and with a much deeper understanding of all the character backgrounds as well. So just briefly, Leilani, if you could maybe go over the synopsis of the short film that we're making with you.
Mhm. Well, okay, as you said, the name is the Zoom Room Breakup. And when it came to the actual act of writing it, I was thinking about, what we had to work with and, what our parameters could or could not be. There's so much out there that's happening in the world. And so I kind of played on the fact that we are in a lockdown mode, and that, how are we relating to one another these days? Now, I never in the project ever say the word pandemic or coronavirus or anything like that, but it's just meant to be a moment in time and a moment in this time, 2020. So, you have these friends come together to what they think, they're not quite sure, it starts out with one character, and that's Kelly Carter. He's the 20 to 30-year-old. And he's sitting at his computer and he's typing like that Zoom invitation that we've been getting lately, and the title on it is relationship update. That's all he gives them. So the friends gather, and one at a time they come on screen, and they're not quite sure where this is going, but they have their thoughts. Have their thoughts about the couple that hasn't appeared on screen yet. So this, it was meant to be a fun piece. It was meant to provide some comedy a little bit, and to look at what, could happen if you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting and everything kind of goes wrong. And you can't quite touch the other person, or that kind of thing. But you're in this meeting. So the kind of characters that I was looking for, I think that there should be a comedy bent that's brought to the project. I think comedy is good on the page, but I think actors can really lift up comedy if they have the skills. Um, think this is a 20s to 30s something cast, so it's a little bit on the younger side of casting audition wise. They're a group of people that they have a connectivity with each other, whether they're friends with Kelly or best friends like Molly with Johanna. There's a sense of connection, but they're not all on the same level of relationship. They don't all like each other. They almost, and like in real life, sometimes you have friends that have friends, and you kind of put up with them, especially if you're at a party or a birthday party or celebration. You're going to see the same people over and over again, and there are people that you'll be attracted to, but other people that you're like, okay, once a year is good enough for me. So that's
Right.
what you're dealing with, a room full of these kinds of people, and they all have different personalities.
And I got really excited when I read the script because um, comedy to some extent is a real lost art these days. I love a lot of indie film comedies, just like everyone else. But I would say for the past 20 years or so, a lot of the comedy that we've been watching collectively has kind of been real snarky or deadpan, or you know. And I think maybe I'm showing my age, mid 40s here, but I think that when people watch Seinfeld or Friends or Everybody Loves Raymond, they sort of see a kind of comedy that is it takes a lot of talent to write. It's obviously a little more there isn't that sarcasm there, and it's not deadpan. It's kind of in your face, but I think it shows a lot of skill, and it's almost a lost art that actors rarely get a chance to act in this way and flex those comedy muscles that people used to back in the 90s. And I get excited when I see that, especially merge with something technical. So are you conscious of that when you're writing, that this is that this is like a traditional, almost like a 3-camera type of comedy, and we're almost bringing it back to some extent?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Actually, dropped my phone. I am, conscious of it, and the industry is actually turning itself back toward that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the comedy that Netflix is buying, they're kind of going back to that multi-camera, 3-camera type of, genre. And so I was conscious of that. Those kinds of shows that you talk about, Vinay, land themselves more toward character. And so that's what I was, kind of going. And I do like that kind of stuff. I think that's what we love about some of the dramedies that are out there in terms of, I was just thinking of Dead to Me, which is running on Netflix. And it's pretty much an hour long dramedy, but it's full of character. And I like that kind of stuff.
One of the things with this that really makes me excited to have it coming down the pipeline with Hollywood Casting and Film is that there's pieces that remind me, I think, of my favorite comedy, live action comedy, because I think I could say my favorite is The Simpsons, but that doesn't really count. But the thing that it reminds me a little of is the TV show Malcolm in the Middle, which is something I grew up watching a lot of. And it's just like, it's very real, but there's comedic moments just because life isn't all serious and life isn't all comedy. It just kind of naturally happens where there's really funny things that would happen in a scenario that isn't exactly hilarious.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're definitely right, Russell. In life, there's always drama, or we live in a dramatic world, but there's always moments of comedy. And I know this sounds a little morbid, but even if you're at a funeral, you'll find there's moments where there's laughter, genuine laughter. And that's who we are as people. We go back and forth. So as a writer, it's kind of, you sometimes get pigeonholed. Can you only write comedy? Can you only write drama? You can write both, because even drama has a little bit of comedy in it. And I think even for actors, there are, those, they talk about moments, moments of levity. So.
And I think the thing that I connected with in the script, and I think it's a reminder when our actors read the sides and they prepare for the roles. It's a reminder that you're good at what you do. On a different level. Once they read the script, they'll see that not only have you created 6 very distinct characters in 10 pages, but it's paced perfectly. It moves along well, and I think it will give people the opportunity to act in a piece that has both of those elements almost perfectly, without the deadpan, without the quirkiness. It's professional, and it moves at the right pace, and it gives me the feeling like we can short films don't always have to be avant-garde. We can produce things that you see on Netflix or on Hulu on the independent level as well, and that's what's exciting for me, in having us make this project.
Yeah, I agree. I do love the medium, the short film medium, because I feel that, it's definitely accessible. And you can tell, a good story. You just have to kind of it's almost like taking a snapshot of a life or a moment in time. So, yeah, I love that.
Right, right. And, when I read the script, I can almost envision some characters on the show Friends. There's a
Yeah.
few characters like that. That what you're looking for specifically, that, someone that is nuanced, but also has the skills to deliver the punchline, and, has those comedy chops as well during the casting.
Yeah, I would love that for those comedy chops to come through. Sometimes, you know, I don't want to dissuade anybody from auditioning, but I would, I think that it would, heighten the project, of course, if we could find, the particular actor that, gets the nuances and delivers on that level. So, it's just something to, have fun with.
Right. And, for our audience that maybe don't know, you started your career with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Growing Pains, and I believe A Different World, right?
I did, and Sister, and I worked on a lot of the family type 3 camera shows. So when I was on those shows, it was like known that three jokes to a page, that kind of a thing. Of course, Will is really quick with it. And he brings the comedy with whatever he does. So,
Right.
Will Smith.
And having the thrill to see people like Will Smith, or all these professional actors deliver your lines over the years, what have you seen in their performances, and what they do with your writing that you may want to impart to our members when they're reading this script and they're trying to figure out the beats and how they deliver each line? Are there a handful of tips that actors can sort of go through, like a checklist, when they're auditioning for a piece like this?
Well, I think it's good to know know the material, of course, but to know what the essence of it is and what, the writer is trying to go after, um, that is helpful. Um, I was in on some, very interesting casting sessions in my early days. I was in a casting session with Leonardo DiCaprio because he was a character on, you know,
Okay.
Games. And what I saw in him, and he was very young at the time, was the fact that he was able, we call it finding the funny, and he had sides like everybody else, and we were on a major search for another character to join the family. Didn't know which way we were going to go. We were thinking about casting a black actor, casting a white actor. We didn't know, and then Leo came into the room, and he pretty much, you know, he was very, kind of like aware of the sides, and he found those little areas, that we didn't even know was funny, and he did that, and so it made him seem like, he was studied, like he looked at it and said, okay, what can I do with this character to, take it to another level or another place, or with, what's behind this, line, kind of a thing. So, I know that that's a little bit of work, and you're not always going to be right with choices, but it felt like, Leo was making choices, and eventually he was the chosen, the chosen person that we went forward with, knowing, who knew how he was going to blow up later and what he was going to do, you know.
Right, but I think too, it's when you read a script like this, and there aren't those extremes where somebody slips on a banana peel or something tragic happens and something absurd happens. It's a perfect slow build that captures a slice of life, but still sort of deftly throws in those comedic moments. And I think that's the thing I'm excited about is we rarely get to make that type of content within a 10-minute time frame, and so this is something that I'm pretty excited to make for those reasons.
Thank you.
It's really interesting because I think it'll really test our actors and our creative ability to kind of have a range in what we're expressing as filmmakers as well as the actors, just simply based on it does ebb and flow quite a bit, and you do have really, there's tense moments and comedic moments, and how do we as creatives on both ends of the camera articulate that the right way and have it work? Because I think that's one of the hardest things about comedy is having it work, because you can write something hilarious and it's like reading a manuscript from a stand-up comedian. Like, they presented it perfectly, but if you try to retell their joke, it is so painfully hard. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that, that kind of difficulty that isn't something that we've tackled with Hollywood casting and film in this capacity yet.
Mhm. The interesting thing is that your actors are going to be acting kind of in a box, and that makes it a little harder, and to make it feel real, So I'm excited about that too, to see, how it all comes together. So.
And it almost feels like there's like a 7-second delay element. I felt like you captured that awkwardness that always occurs on Zoom. Like,
Yeah, I think we can.
anybody.
I think that as film, in the process of making the film, there's some fun things that can be done that are almost like inside jokes of the frustrations that we go through on Zoom, so or any virtual meeting platform. So not just to point out Zoom, but yeah, on any platform such as that.
And I think maybe as the subtext too, as we go into what is this, month 4 or 5 of the of the
Oh yeah.
quarantine, it's like we can. I think what your story captures, this breakup occurring on Zoom, is that after 4 or 5 months, there's only so many things you can continue to kick the can down the road. Eventually you have to have those conversations
Right. Right.
online, and it goes into the reading of a will, or all these serious.
Mhm.
I think that's also an element that will probably resonate with not only audience members, but hopefully some film festival judges as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Good.
it's also really interesting with what Vinay just said, the awkwardness of Zoom. I know that personally in the last how many ever months we've been self-isolating and quarantining with the whole situation. You're bound to have an argument on Zoom, and you're bound to have really funny conversations on Zoom. And it's funny when you have an argument on Zoom, because in most arguments, you don't wait for the other person to finish their thought all the time for you to start on Zoom. It's very,
Right.
oh, okay, I know you finish your point. Okay, cool. Let me go into my point. So it's very strange as to how people have to argue in this medium. And I think, yeah, this script does show that there is, limitation to Zoom, and we have to change how we communicate. So it's gonna be fun to see how everyone tackles that idea differently on screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you trying to, when you wrote it, Leilani, were you trying to write something that would be like the safest thing to film as well?
I thought about that, because of course everybody's kind of safer at home right now,
Yeah.
and I wanted it to be a project that you didn't have to wait to shoot, or it didn't put a lot of pressure on anyone associated with it. So I was hoping that we could come together with something that was safe and fun and doable
Right. Right.
future.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
in our last 10 minutes, let's just talk about a few ideas of what we are looking for this project. So when we're done filming, when we're done editing, what are some of the goals that we all have to see where this project goes?
Mhm.
I'll,
Well, go ahead, Renee. I'll let you start.
uh, just from a reader, I know that there are a lot of festivals that are very comedy centric, and I tend to think that writing like this always gets rewarded, because I mentioned earlier that it's almost a lost art to have this type of, I would say, traditional comedy. I think the reason it's gone away is because it's hard to do, and it's easier to write the snarky characters, or easier to write the absurd storylines. So I get a sense that if we shoot this and we pull this off, and the performances are great, and the filmmaking is great, that it will stand out to a large degree at some festivals. But what do you think, Leilani?
I agree. I think that sometimes it's easier to write that drama short than to write a comedy short. I've judged in a couple of film festivals, and the comedies can be few and far between. Not to say that they're not out there, because like you said, Vinay, there are whole festivals that focus on that. But it does open up the possibilities, of getting looked at. And then on the actor side of things, I hope that it will provide an opportunity that is a little different for some of our actors that haven't had the chance to, do these kinds of performances, or to even find them, I guess. So I'm hopeful for that, and for their benefit as well, that the short itself can be something that they can use in the future for what they may need. You know,
Add to that too, I think that I'm excited that they get to deliver, funny lines in a story without every line being a punchline, if you know what I mean. I think I'm talking for me as a very amateur writer. I think that's what we tend to do, us amateurs, is when we're trying to be funny, we'll give you the skeleton of the story, right, and then we'll put in a zinger and then, some more story and then another zinger. And I'm excited to give our actors the opportunity just to have it flow, to be in a funny story and just have it flow.
Right. And I'm hoping for, a cast that looks like all of us. So, I think that there's a lot of room for casting as well on this particular project.
Yeah, yeah. And
Well, I think that's about all the time we have for our recording of the podcast. Thank you so much, Vinay, and thank you, Leilani, for joining us on this episode. I'm really excited to see where this project goes. I'm excited to film it, and I hope we're all excited to make it together. And I hope to have Leilani and Vinay on one of our next episodes to talk more about what we have going on. And thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been an awesome episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.